Now, next up, we're looking at Chinese football, and we'll look a bit more about the development of the game over there in the Far East. But in particular, we want to have a bit of a focus on one club, Guangzhou, who have got some quite significant names on their roster, but not actually on the pitch, off it. Marcello Lippi and Cannavaro. And Marcello Lippi is very much in the news in the last week because he's retired from club football, so he's kind of stepped down a rung or two at that club. We're speaking to Giancarlo Rinaldi in just a short minute. He's a bit of an Italian football expert to give us his thoughts on that. But first up, Paul, how do you assess Lippi as a manager?
As a manager, you could probably quite compellingly make a case for him being the best Italian manager, certainly in modern Italian football. But it's quite hard to evaluate his record. I mean, 5 Serie A titles certainly can't be sniffed at with Juventus. But actually, I think it's fair to say that his legacy will always be remembered for winning the World Cup in 2006 with Italy. And actually, it's a really good kind of example of how small the margins are in football. That in that World Cup, you know, Italy looked pretty dreadful for 3 or 4 games at the start, and in fact were, you know, whiskers away from going out to Australia. And Lippi would sort of be remembered as someone who never quite cut it at international level. Instead, I think he can quite justifiably say that he'll always be remembered in Italian folklore for delivering that title, in addition to a stranglehold on the game when it was probably at its strongest in Italy during the 90s and early 2000s, leading that Juventus team and building this formidable unit.
Well, we've very much got the opinion of the studio, but what about our Italian football expert, Giancarlo Rinaldi? Giancarlo, are you there?
I am indeed.
How are you?
I'm good.
Excellent. Lovely to have you back on. So, Lippi, we're saying here probably one of the best Italian managers of all time. Would you be in agreement with that?
Oh yeah, I don't think there's much doubt about that. His record stands comparison with anyone really. You know, I don't think there's many sit next to him, like Trapattoni maybe, and Fabio Capello. These sort of names come to mind. Ancelotti as well. But you know, to win a World Cup and win a lot with club sides as well that's a pretty impressive record he's got.
Do you feel like it's sort of an apt time for him to be hanging up the managerial coat?
I think so, yeah. I think he's achieved everything he ever wanted to achieve as a manager. I believe he's found the kind of distance from his family a bit difficult. It's different from Tuscany, where he's from, a bit difficult to cope with. So a time to kind of step back a bit and get more time with family is probably welcome. As I say, there's nothing left to prove as a coach really. So you know, why not hand on to someone a bit younger?
And was it curious to you that he went on this Chinese adventure, or was that very much within his character?
It was a surprise to me, I have to say. I didn't see him doing that. I guess maybe he's so associated with the Juventus in Italy that maybe it was going to be hard to take another job in Italy. I mean, if I'm honest, I'd probably thought he might have ended up even, you know, a quieter life down the divisions and taking a team in his native Tuscany, or trying a challenge somewhere in Europe. But I think we have to realise now there's a lot of money going around in a lot of footballing realities that maybe previously we wouldn't have expected an Italian or European manager to try out, whereas now, you know, they can make, Italy's the land of making an offer that you can't refuse, but it seems maybe things have turned on their head, and there are other places that can lure them to try a new experience. And I think a lot of Italian managers, find that almost anywhere in the world is a less pressured job than they have in Italy. So, you know, it's almost a relaxation for some of them.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty good sort of incubator management job, as Paul sort of mentioned it. He's going to have Lippi, I can just imagine in bunks together, swapping tips. Do you think that's going to help him out, having that sort of father figure as he starts one of these first managerial positions?
I suppose so. I'm always a bit dubious about these things, because you don't really want the man who's just done the job kind of looking over your shoulder. You imagine in your own career or my career, if I'd had the previous incumbent sitting in the desk next to me saying, "Oh, I didn't do it like that, and I didn't do it like that," I would have probably found it quite irritating. But equally, I think it depends a bit on the character, and obviously these are guys who've worked together before and worked together well, if in different roles. So you have to presume that there's a rapport there and that they can get on. And in that case, if you are going to learn the trade, there's not many better people to learn it from. I have to say that Cannavaro, not really the first person I would have thought of from that World Cup squad to go into management. I think there are others. I mean, I think we've kind of got a taste of what his character's like in Britain through his work with ITV during the World Cup. And if you were predicting managers, I think you would have tipped Alessandro Nesta, his old partner in defence, as more of the thinking player, and Cannavaro more the man of action. But he has done some work before. I think he was in the United Arab Emirates previously as an assistant coach. So he's obviously got aspirations that way. And as you say, he's got a good tutor in Lippi, certainly.
We'll certainly keep our eyes on that one. Like you say, a little bit left field, but it's going to be fascinating to see how he gets on. Thank you, Giancarlo, once again so much for your brilliant insight. Much appreciated. Take care, and we'll speak to you soon.
No, absolutely, it's a pleasure.
Goodbye.
Bye.
There you go, lads. But I think we've got 1 or 2 minutes left. The health of Chinese football in general, pretty big country, not doing so well, especially when you compare them to Japan, which we're getting on to shortly. But any thoughts or opinions on why they're not succeeding despite such an enormous population?
Well, it's a grassroots issue from what I can see. And I was reading an article that suggested that the Chinese Football Federation was saying there's between 7,000 and 50,000 children participating regularly. Now, that's a very vague figure, but it's absolutely tiny compared to even England, which is a much smaller population base. I think the simple fact is people aren't playing, and whether that's to do with the fact Chinese football has had this slightly murky reputation as a match-fixing country. Very bad.
I mean, I read into a little bit about those naughty boys when it comes to match-fixing, and as recent as a few years ago, the actual Chinese FA, who obviously need to actually keep an eye out for match-fixing themselves, were seen to have actually taking bribes from players or people associated with players to actually be in the national team. So over the course of 2 years, there was upwards of 50, 60 players going through squads.
Cap's a cap, though, isn't it?
So, yeah, cap is a cap.